thank you so much for your time today. I can't wait to talk more about One Love and hear more about your incredible performances. Let me start with a question for both of you. Bob Marley means so much to so many people. In the months since the film was released, how have you seen the impact of the film? Do you have any specific memories of people sharing with you how much Bob and Rita's story has meant to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people. What month are we now? October. So it's been, I feel like lots of people back home have seen the film. I felt like over the last 6 weeks as well, it felt like more intense than when it came out, because I was like, oh yeah, there's streaming as well. And it's been like it's been in the top 5 on Paramount Plus for however long. So I could definitely, in London, I can definitely feel like the people who didn't go and see it at the cinema, who were waiting for it to come into their homes, have been watching it. And then on the plane on the way over, I was like, oh my God, it's the 3rd film along, and you walk into the toilet and people are watching. So I always find when you get to the States as well, particularly New York, people are much more vocal about what they feel and think. They don't hold back in talking to you, whereas back home, people are a little bit like, they kind of give you a space, and then there's a bit more reserved. They're a bit more reserved. But yeah.
I have found exactly what I hoped would be the case. Younger people who didn't know Bob, definitely didn't know Rita, have been like, I didn't know that, like, he was even married, and I didn't know that, it was such an emotional relationship, and just all these discoveries, seeing the discovery on their face has been really, really nice, because some people may have heard their parents playing Bob, or they may have, I don't know, come across a documentary or two, but seeing them discover and appreciate and respect the artistry that Bob had and still has is really powerful, because it also takes away from the acting side and it just brings it back to art. And I think that's outside of love and family and core values. That's the other thing that is really represented in the film, that we get to appreciate how art is made. And when young people who were not there at that time really see it, and they see the references, and they see how their favorite artists are, pulled from Bob's work, I'm like, great, yes, you're connecting now that, like, he set up so much in this industry. And now we get to celebrate it again, which is lovely.
Yeah, well, I do want to hear about how you both developed your performances. Kingsley, this is obviously not your first time portraying a real person. And I've heard you talk in the past about the tension between, trying to copy a person's every move, imitate their every move, versus capturing their essence and the essence of who they are. With someone almost as mythical as Bob Marley, how did you tune out the myths and the public perception of Bob in order to find what his essence really meant for your performance?
Yeah, good question. Well put. Because I didn't have a choice, really, because I'm so physically different to Bob, in tone of voice, in size, in shoulder width. Like, there's not actually that much. Even our facial structure, Bob's nose he has a much more European. Like, I didn't actually feel like there was anything else other than the essence. But that it should always be the essence. I guess the essence is the psychology of someone that feels connected to the story. And to me, the story from the beginning, and it evolved and changed. I read a script from a few years ago that was different, but what was the same was always the inciting incident, which was the attempted assassination and having to leave. And the idea of Bob not feeling safe was something that was expanded upon. And I guess the exploration of what it means to feel safe and what it means to not feel safe, and then finding sort of synonyms and peace and safety and love and self-love and just kind of honing in on a controlling idea that was a man's lifelong journey to find peace. And that was really simple and felt universal, and felt like it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we're all on some kind of journey to wanting to feel peace, inner peace, or safety. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel loved. And where was Bob with that at this time in the film? And then I was very lucky because I got to speak to, 30, 40 people from all around who knew Bob in so many different ways. Everyone had their own different stories. Lots of people had sound bites, but I was able to leave all of those conversations and also the work that I did listening to Bob, feeling like everyone's sort of saying the same thing about him. And then meeting him there, I sort of identified with a lot of personal things. And then you find the essence there. I think you find the essence in something like that. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but that was the process.
Lashana, a similar question. If I'm not mistaken, I believe this was your first time portraying a real person on film. I know there are different schools of thought about meeting the person that you're going to be playing, but you did meet Rita. Were you hesitant for that, or were you excited? And how did that help influence your performance?
No hesitancy whatsoever. In fact, I insisted, I begged for it because I just had a feeling that it would be one of those meetings that was that would allow me to hone in on the spiritual aspect of her and their relationship, which I can, find myself in some books maybe and speak to some people, get some research. But, when you have someone who is so giving and lovely and still an artist and just rooted in a different way energetically, I knew that speaking to her would give me something, even if it wasn't answers to questions that I had, which there were many, and I ended up not asking any of those questions. In fact, I didn't even take my book out. I was just like, it's not that. I've prepared for it to be a question and answer kind of meeting, but actually what it is like a meeting of minds, and it's helping me to really understand her emotional journey, the love that she had for Bob, the love that she still has for Bob, and how that love journey has taken place. Because I think it's also very easy to say that, well, Bob isn't here anymore. He's not been here in a long time. Like, she's moved on. But as soon as she was growing as a young woman, she met Bob and was growing with him. So her whole life has been with this relationship that has taught her a lot about who she is as a human on this earth. And that meeting really let me know that she is, she's just different. I've still not quite found the word for who she is, but she's definitely someone who I think will just give you the clothes off her back. Like, every time I went to see her, she was like, here's some like memorabilia, and here is something that I had when, like a necklace that reminds me of Bob, or I've put these pictures of the two of us up as a display for you to see like our journey, just because I thought it would be helpful. She was so like of service to me immediately that I thought, I now need to gift her me being of service to who she was as a woman and who she was to Bob, because this is going to be the world's education on her. And I didn't want this to be the time where people go like, oh, who is she? What? So she was his wife? I don't really understand. I wanted there to be a clear definition of who she is and what she represented and how important she was to Bob. And also remind just this industry that roles of this kind can very much so be reduced to, oh, she was the wife, oh, she looked after the kids. And, she was in the band, but we don't really know who. She was so much. She advocated for that man hard. And you see that in the film, but that's not a slither of what she did for him. So meeting her was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that the few times that I did, and that she was receptive. Because it must be really weird having an actor coming into your house being like, so tell me what your favorite color is. It's very strange. But it was necessary for me, and I have gained a sister. As she said, you're my sister. So I feel like I feel in there now with her.
I met someone yesterday who met Rita at a bus stop when she first came to LA from Jamaica, and Rita was in front of her, and she tapped her on the shoulder and just said, "You're inspiration to me, and I'm here because of you," and da-da-da. And she said that Rita just turned around and just put her hand on her and said, "Take wings and fly." And she got on the bus. I was like, Rita was on a bus?
That's incredible.
I know, firstly,
Yeah,
what was she doing on the bus? Wow.
Take wings and fly.
Philosophy. I love it.
That's beautiful.
Sure.
That's beautiful.
When I first met Rita at the screening in Jamaica, and I went over to her and I kissed her hand, and she looked at me, and then she put her hand on the back of my head and slapped me. Which is a sign of love in Jamaica,
Yes.
apparently. Which it felt like, but yeah.
Thank God.
That's amazing. Well, you also spent a lot of time with Ziggy, I understand. How did meeting with Ziggy help you develop a more authentic performance as Bob?
I can't imagine this process without Ziggy being there every day. He was there every day, and I mean, I flew over to spend time with Ziggy and his family 7-8 months before we started filming. So I can't remember, it was mainly me just ranting intensely at him and him just, yeah. Okay, cool. I do think looking back though, with Ziggy and Neville and all of the Jamaican crew who came over, there was something about that intensity that made them feel easeful, in the sense of like, right, he's doing his thing. And I never felt like, I felt like without that, I don't know, it was just it worked in balance in a way. Ziggy helped me to feel like it was gonna be okay, if that makes any sense. Because it's, when people say, oh, the pressure of playing Bob, it must be scary and all of that stuff, you go, yeah, but it wasn't, because Ziggy and Neville were there every day. So any concerns, if anything's not working, they're always gonna tell you. They'll be like, no man, it's not that. Or they'd say, yes, that's fine, don't worry. Or if I was over obsessing with trying to get something right, they'd be like, we've got it. Or a word, I'd be like Jamaicans say it like this. I'd be like, I know, but Bob says it like this. And then we'd all listen and go, oh, Bob says it like that. And then we're like, well, the Jamaicans are gonna think you're doing it wrong. And I was like, well, but this is how Bob said it. So what do we do? And I think we ended up keeping a lot of Bobisms in there, because he traveled. This is not answering your question at all, I'm aware of that. But
You're good, this is great.
Bob's accent was like country. Bob had a really sort of mixed way of speaking. So it wasn't just learning the language or the dialect, it was learning that, but also like how Bob spoke specifically, which sometimes you just don't know. Like, he had his own way of saying things. And that was why it was so important to have Ziggy and Neville there, and the dialect, the language team that we had, and so much input from everyone, just trying to fine tune it all the way through ADR and post. It was, but yeah.
I was going to ask about if you felt, for both of you, if you felt more pressure to get their speaking voices right, which fewer people know, broadly speaking, versus their singing voices, which everyone knows. How difficult was it sort of balancing the sounds of both of those sides of your performances?
Well, my voice is deep, so there's no world where I can pitch up. You try and pitch up, it's just gonna sound stupid. And I remember listening to Philip Seymour Hoffman and Capote and going like, how did he do that? There was something different about it. I spoke to a lot of specialists and they were like, you can't do that with this, because Bob he's a higher frequency but grounded. So he has a rough, higher voice. So if I go higher, I lose the rough. So we really just had to drop into, so what you have is the rhythm and the flow and the physicality that goes with the way that he talks. So you're trusting that the language and the rhythm of speech mixed with an authenticity in playing the scene is going to allow people to believe it. And the detail of like, is it here, is it here, it's here, doesn't matter. And singing was the same. I got to a place where I could sing some songs in the same tone as Bob, but my voice would have just been destroyed. So what we did was we understood that Bob actually sung a tone down when he was rehearsing. So Bob actually sung it, I think it was a B, put the guitar down a tone, and I could handle that. So we had evidence of Bob in recording singing in that pitch. So I handled all of the acoustic stuff, and and then when we got to the concerts, I would try my best just for the emotion of the song, but then they were always going to use Bob's tracks over those anyway.
I remember when I got the role, like my mom and a few other people were like, "Oh, well, you're going to be fine accent-wise because you're Jamaican, so you just do the accent." And I was like, have you heard her speak? Like, it was a different time, different era, but also she has this incredibly, like, Jamaican RP clipped, very clear way of speaking that no one in my family speaks like that. Like, I've heard it and I recognize it, but it's not something that's actually set in my mouth. And because it's so close to an RP, whether it be British RP, American RP, it kind of freaked me out a little bit because there's some sounds that sound slightly close to my own accent that I would even question, do I even sound Jamaican right now? Am I pronouncing that correctly? Or am I just lending my own voice to her? And I went through a very similar process to you in that listening to her, just watching her on YouTube, listening to her interviews, she's very highly set, very high and very light. And my voice is quite low and it's not light. So I had to throw away sounding like her very early on because I like to be a bit of a mimic and I like to know that I can do exactly what I'm seeing in front of me. But I knew that I wouldn't be able to achieve it because it doesn't sound right coming out of my mouth. So I had to use almost my tone with her pronunciations and her essence in a way, which takes you out of accent work actually and more into how do they feel in your body. So yeah, it got a little jarring because even when I thought I was doing the obvious patois sounds that I have in my body, that didn't sound right because she doesn't always speak patois as well. That really blew my mind. I thought, well, I'm doing a Jamaican accent, I'm naturally going to go into patois, but that didn't work. I had to just speak in just regular English. So yeah, it felt a little strange sometimes.
We had it was so interesting because once we got going, Auntie Faye would be giving a lot of the younger Jamaican actors notes on the difference between Jamaican patois, you know, in the 60s and 70s and how it evolved through the 80s and 90s and how it's different now. It was, I mean, there's no dialect, you know, that I think has been more badly represented in sort of American and UK film and TV. So we all knew as well that this is the one dialect language that you don't get wrong. There's a huge, I knew going into this, Jamaicans are going to be waiting to see how we mess this up. And so which is kind of a gift really, because going in, it was from the beginning, it was like, we don't mess around with this. We have to get it right. We didn't move forward until we had it down, like pen to paper, what was being said, how it was being said. And so, I think, and just the psychology of movement and speak, you know, is like why people move the way they move and why people talk the way they talk. You have all of these amazing experts on films who like, that's their thing. You have people who are looking at people going, they move like that because of this, or they sound like that because of this. And you get to absorb it all and, you know, and use it. There's no world where you could do this film without all of the help that we had.
Yeah, and Lashana, this is not your first time singing on screen either, though, of course, Matilda is a wildly different film from this one. And by the way, my kids were so incredibly excited when I told them I was interviewing Miss Honey this morning. They were very excited. But as completely different as those performances are from Matilda and One Love, how did singing in Matilda help prepare you for another music-driven role here?
Well, for Matilda, we had a mixture of pre-recorded studio versions of the tracks that we'd laid down earlier on. And then we also sang live. And then they spliced them together, which doesn't really give you any room to hide. You just got to go for it every single time. But also it taught me a lot about how to protect the voice, which is why I was always like, whenever I heard you doing something, I was always like, does he need a drink? Does he need a tea, like a tea? Because I know how hard it can be to just be belting constantly for some of those big numbers that Miss Honey had. For this, it was questionable whether my voice was even going to be featured in the film. There's a very low mix of the I3s in the live shows.
Okay.
I can hear me slightly, but I think that is mixed with the stems from the original live shows and someone else maybe, I'm not sure. But it is the three of us doing something. So we were actually singing, me and the I2s, but we weren't actually, we kind of just left Kingsley to it because we know that you were doing the heavy lift. He was doing the heavy lifting.
I insisted that the microphone was on loud.
Yeah, he was all
the concert
like,
scenes.
up, can we bring it up?
Yeah.
We were like, can we bring ours up? And they were like, yeah, sure. Sure. Kingsley, don't worry, you're going to get what you want. It's different though, it's completely different. There's no, we know what her purpose is in the band as backup. Very, serves a big purpose, but also it's definitely there to support. Whereas Miss Honey needed to be belting quite consistently.
100%.
Yeah. But I
100%.
sang before I acted, so it was helpful to be able to go back on my musical experience to bring it into film.
That's so good. Well, Kingsley and Lashana, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for telling me about One Love. I am getting to wrap. I have to ask really quickly before I go. Kingsley, I couldn't let you go without asking about you participated in one of the greatest performances in Academy Awards history this year with I'm Just Ken. How wild was that experience for you,
wild.
especially in front of the biggest names in Hollywood?
You can see Scorsese there, you see Spielberg there, you can see them all there. But it felt so appropriate for the evening. It was like you need to have just a bit of lightness in this room. But it was also cool because we flew out the day before, so we had a few hours to rehearse. But I was like, if it goes wrong, it kind of works as well. So you can just have fun with it. Do you know what I mean? We're buffoons, so the more mistakes, the better. But yeah, it was great.
That's amazing. Amazing. Well, again, thank you guys so much for your time. This was awesome. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.